こんにちは。私はHakonです。今日はもっとひらがなを学びます。Hello, my name is Hakon and today we will learn more hiragana. If you remember my last episode, I talked a little bit about the Japanese syllabary, all the possible syllables that can be made. There are some special ones. I will go into more details later where you combine two characters. And then I gave you the first 5 characters to learn, the hiragana, a, I, u, e, o, and of course the syllabary is based on the same vowels. Those are the 5 possible vowels of Japanese, a, I, u, e, o, and each line of the syllabary, of the alphabet, I suppose you could say, is the possible consonants. We've got k, ka, sa, ta, na, ha, ma, ya, ra, wa. And you can also voice some of these. So you get ga, za, da, ba, pa. And you also can combine some of them to create other things like kia, kyu, kyo, sha, shu, shu, sho, etc. And I'll get to those later because they're a little bit more complex and I don't want to confuse you with too much information right away. Now, in addition to doing the next line of hiragana today, I also want to talk a little bit about another little thing. I'll just do this now. And that is when you talk about syllables or morai in Japanese, you're talking about units of sound. And I'll just give an example now of something that often happens when you transliterate Japanese into English. Let's do 2 examples. I got Kyoto here and I got Tokyo. Okay, so these are 2 city names in Japan. You all know these, Kyoto and Tokyo. Or you say Kyoto, people would say, and Tokyo. But of course, in Japanese, these are not as the opposite of each other. They both were capitals at some point. Anyway, so I think Kyo means capital. But to here means different things in these words. Now, one thing you will notice is that in Japanese, it really is written to, kyo, so that all sounds are long, and it's written kyo to. That's a short to sound, actually. Another way that sometimes they're written in Japanese is that you, or in Latin alphabet, is that you put a line over the vowels that are long. So you get Tokyo, Kyoto. So that line is called a macron. That's the name of the diacritic. It's not very common to use. People often just skip them. So there are several ways of writing these long vowels in Latin alphabet, or Romaji, as it's known as in Romaji. Let's put that down here. So Roman characters, literally, in Japanese, romaji. And usually you don't write it like this. It's more normal to write it like this, and even more normal to write it without the macrons altogether. But if you're trying to transliterate something very precisely so that you know exactly what it is supposed to be in Japanese, you often would use the macrons, or although you don't want to use them over all the letters. If you have a long E sound, so E, 2 E's in a row, you wouldn't write E with a macron, you would just write 2 E, for instance. Other peculiarities is that, although this is usually transliterated properly, if you have a word like that's a long E sound, because that is usually, because of the way it's written in Japanese, it's written EI, you actually transliterate that usually when you write in Romaji, because it's kirei, and that is how you write it. You wouldn't write it like that, for instance. So that's just something about that. And of course, when you're talking about syllables, Tokyo is phonetically, that is 2 syllables split in the middle, Tokyo. But because of the way that the Japanese language works, you are talking about units of time, and that becomes your sort of syllable definition almost, known as mora or morai, plural. You have 4 morai in Tokyo. So you have to, o, kyo, and o. So Tokyo. And the idea is that each of these units will get about the same length of time of being pronounced, and also they would have the same stress as well. You don't have word stress contrast in Japanese, so when you speak Japanese, you try to put equal stress on every single syllable. So it's not Tokyo, for instance. It's not Tokyo, it's Tokyo. And when I say watashi wa Hakon desu, it's not watashi wa Hakon desu. It's, you try to give it even stress. So it's watashi wa Hakon desu. So equal length, equal stress. There is some tonal contrast going on, which I don't know that much about yet, but I will learn about it and I will talk about it in future videos. So, leaving that for now, we go back to our first characters. You remember from last time we had our A, which looks a little bit like O, so it's good to sort of do them together. So A, I, U, E, O. A, first a horizontal line, then is a vertical line curving a little bit to the right, and then you go quite high up, not as high as the crossing line, and you create a sort of a symbolic fish almost that curves back down close to the baseline here. The E is like a character like so. Could be a little bit more that way actually. The U is one of the ones I found the hardest to write because of it's quite a peculiar shape to me. Little line going down to the right, and then it's a little bit like so. And the E, similar actually in many ways, starting with exactly the same line there, and then it looks a bit like a Z character, or a Z if you're in America, like so. And then the O, which is one of my favorites actually for some reason, go down, begins like the R, but it curves left instead of right, and it continues around like so, and you get a little squiggle there at the end. And then we're doing the K line, the next one, so that is ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, and we got, that's not a very good one, but yeah, okay, you get the drift. It's good enough to be distinctive, so that's the main thing. So then I'm doing 2 lines going up to the right, and a line through them, and turning that way and going around. It's almost I can imagine that it sort of just follows around. Ku is a very easy one. It's just a angled bracket, really. Ke goes fast like that. It's quite a simple line down with a bit of a hook on it. And then you do something that's similar to the beginning of the R, horizontal line and going down, but this one does not curve to the right, just go straight down usually. And then Ko is similar to E, but it's pretty much horizontal, and so you can see the similarity. This one is angled, this one is this way, and it's so that's Ka, Ki, Ku, Ke, Ko. Now, I did say last time that you also, in addition to the basic set of many of these, you also had a voiced set, a G line. So, and that is done just by adding what looks a bit like quotation marks. So I'll just do those as well. So just add a little quotation mark lookalike there. So that's ga, gi, gu, ge, and go. So ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, ga, gi, gu, ge, go. In some context, a g sound is also pronounced very soft. It's almost like a ng sound. Especially that is true for there's a particle which is written like nga. Sorry, it's written like ga, I should say, but it's pronounced like nga. And this is one thing that happens with many of the particles in Japanese, and perhaps I should say a little bit about what a particle is. If you can imagine, in English is a syntactic language. That is, the word order is what tells you what is the subject, what is the object, and what is the direct object. Who does the action, who does the action, what they do the action on, and to and for whom the action is done. In Japanese, you use particles to denote who does something, who's the subject. Use particles to show who's the recipient of something. You use particles as a kind of an preposition as well, to say something is in a place or in motion towards a place. And they are usually just one syllable words, or not quite words, particles. They're sort of fragments of words, and that are sort of added on to the end of a word. And one of them is nga, which is a sort of a subject particle, a kind of a subject. There are two different kind of subject particles, and we'll get back to that at some point. And often the particles are reduced phonetically, so that you have a particle e, which can mean motion towards, or something is something to do with that. And it is written the same as he, but the h sound has disappeared and it's just become e. And the same is true of the object particle, which used to be the syllable wo, but the w part has disappeared and it has become o. So this is quite a common thing. Another one is the sort of theme particle, which is wa, but it actually is written ha, peculiarly, but because of the sort of phonetic changes that have happened from being a particle, it has turned into wa. So if you use Google Translate and you write in I am and your name, and you look at the transliteration, it would say watashi ha, but that is pronounced watashi wa. So just a heads up there if you are using Google Translate. So right, so that's it for today, I think. So we've got I've done a little bit of a repeat of the syllabary. I will say more about that gradually as we go along. And I said a little bit about syllables, units of time, about morai. I will say more about that too. And also, if you write a Japanese word in Latin alphabet, that is called romaji. And then we have the first 10 characters. Ignore those for the moment. A, I, U, E, O, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. And then, of course, the K line can also become a G with ga, gi, gu, ge, go. It's nice just to learn them together, really. Even though that's not the order you usually do it, you would do all the ones first and then you would do these afterwards, but I just like doing it together. Next time, we'll do the S line and possibly the T line as well. So thanks for watching. Domo arigatou gozaimasu. And I will see you again next time with more Japanese. If you enjoyed this, if you have any questions, please comment, please like, share, subscribe, all those things. Add this to your public playlists if you want to support my channel. Share it on social media if you like it and enjoyed it. Join me on Patreon if you really want to support what I do creatively, both on YouTube and elsewhere. And I will see you next time with more Japanese. And yeah, what's there left to say? Sayonara. Bye bye.